Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, as we predicted a couple of weeks ago, the E3 countries, and that is the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, have indeed made sure that the sanctions on Iran will snap back in place within really 7 days, as things stand. So what happened was the way this works through the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, is that if somebody thinks that Iran is not in compliance with the JCPOA, then anybody can then bring forward a United Nations resolution to lift permanently the sanctions on Iran. If that fails, if that UN resolution fails, then the sanctions automatically snap back in place. No vetoes are allowed, and this was what the E3 powers made sure of. And so there
Yeah,
was a
very convenient. Yeah,
very
it's
convenient. And they had the meeting at the UN Security Council on Friday, and it was in fact South Korea that brought forward the UN resolution calling for the lifting of sanctions, permanent lifting of sanctions on Iran. There were only 4 votes in favor, so it didn't pass, and that means the sanctions will snap back in place. So this is quite an interesting development because, as we have discussed many times before, the JCPOA essentially fell into disuse because of what the United States did. It was the United States that walked away from the JCPOA in 2018, and then the other signatories of the JCPOA, and that's the E3, failed to essentially make good on
which they
Iran because the United
promised
States
they would.
immediately put sanctions back in place against Iran, unilateral sanctions.
The E3 promised they would continue to recognize the agreement and they would compensate for it. They promised this, until they were blue in the face. Well, what happened?
That's
Nothing.
right. That's right. So that never happened, and then so the Trump administration came back to power, even though there was long, pointless negotiations with Biden. They went nowhere about returning to the JCPOA. It was obvious that they were not going to go anywhere. I mean, Biden had no interest in returning to the JCPOA. Um, and then suddenly the Trump administration started talking about, hey, well, maybe we can get another JCPOA, JCPOA 2.0, and maybe we can work something out with Iran. And there was a lot of negotiations, which were obviously then done with a view to give Iran a false sense of security before the attack that came from Iran and then from Israel and the United States. Now, throughout all this time, the E3 had nothing to say. Nothing. I mean, they didn't walk away from the JCPOA, and yet they might as well have. So they pretended that they were still following the JCPOA, but they weren't doing anything to relieve the pressure on Iran. And then when the United States and Israel attacked Iran, they had nothing to say about that either. And so now they
But they do
say,
have something to say now.
yeah, then they say, oh, Iran is in violation of the JCPOA. They are in violation. Well, what about this attack? Isn't that somehow, I don't know, that seems like a violation of, I don't know how many parts of the UN Charter. I don't know. An awful lot of chapters in the UN Charter were violated by the United States and Israel. Well, you have nothing to say about that, but somehow Iran is the one that's in
Okay,
violation.
so George, I will ask the obvious question. Why are they agreeing to the snapback of the sanctions. I mean, because given your narrative, they essentially have washed their hands of it essentially and walked away. Okay. Why are there sudden interest in it now?
Well, I think I find plausible the argument that their real interest is with Russia and Ukraine. That they are, and for, in two ways. I mean, they are very angry that Iran has been, you know, more or less aligned with Russia during this time. Certainly provided drones and so on, and also, this is a way of currying favor with Washington because, and they're very anxious to curry favor with Washington because they want Washington to take the fight to Russia, to do more against Russia. So I think I think those are the two reasons why the Europeans have now become so hostile to Iran. They
And
weren't
to
back
add,
what 10 years ago when they were negotiating the JCPOA. The Americans were obviously hostile, but the Europeans really weren't particularly hostile. They were willing
well,
to work with Iran.
and to add, and agreeing with you, add another layer to it is that then, of course, the increased hostility towards Iran, particularly after or as part of the bombing campaign in July, the Iranians and the Russians will embrace, and the Europeans will say, see, Mr. Trump, see, it's Russia. It's Russia that is making sure that the regime in Tehran remains in place. See,
Right,
and what I'm doing is I'm agreeing with you
right,
because the Russians are going to say that the West is not recognizing the sovereign rights of Iran, and that's going to be music to the Europeans'
right,
ear.
right.
Because so if we can get Trump on our side with Iran, maybe he'll follow with us with Ukraine. I mean, it's like it's
No, I think
childlike.
that's
It's childlike thinking.
that's without question, because this is what matters to these Europeans. I mean, Ukraine is what matters to them. I think they don't really care that much about Iran. They didn't care that much 10 years ago. They don't care that much now. I don't think they were ever particularly persuaded by the American-Israeli thesis that Iran was on the brink of having nuclear weapons. They went along with that. Okay, fine, we'll get a deal. But the fact that they are now essentially as belligerent as the United States is on Iran, that means something else is going on here. And I think it's a way of currying favor with the Trump administration in order to get him more involved with Ukraine. So just want to take a look at a couple of the stories. And here, this is the UN Security Council vote, and then they say only these are the four countries that voted in order to lift the sanctions on Iran, Russia, China, Algeria, and Pakistan. And then these are the countries that voted against, and so naturally it failed, and now the
I noticed that Somalia voted. What's their dog
yeah,
in this match?
it's yeah. There's obviously some kind of a calculation,
Yeah, of course.
sucking up to the United States for some reason, um, and um, and then here we have if the draft is not adopted, the previous UN sanctions are automatically reimposed, meaning that unless the Council explicitly votes to keep sanctions relief in place, previous UN sanctions are automatically restored. That's so convenient. Um, and no vetoes allowed. So that's it. It just automatically goes.
Don't even attempt democracy.
That's right. Yeah. Um, and then here's the Russians. And this is quite interesting. This was the speech by the Russians. Obviously, they were against it. Um, but what Nebenzia said is that he's saying this is an illegal decision to reimpose unilateral sanctions. Um, and then Russia has repeatedly made its position clear to the Council. The UK, France, and Germany have no right to invoke the snapback mechanism, blah, blah. A party that does not comply with its obligations under any treaty or agreement forfeits its right to use the instruments provided by that agreement. and then
Wow. George, the impeccable logic as usual
right,
and very easy to understand.
right.
Where is that in Western media?
No,
Not
no,
even mentioned.
it isn't. It isn't. But I think what's important is saying the so-called notification from the E3 to launch the snapback has no legal or procedural force. As such, it cannot serve as a valid basis for any decisions or actions by the Security Council. This position is laid out in detail in a joint letter from the foreign ministers of Russia, China, and Iran. We must emphasize once again, in our view, no snapback procedure is taking place. The very submission of this draft resolution is a flagrant violation of Resolution 2231. That's the one that installed the JCPOA. Therefore, the Russian Federation will not recognize the validity of any alleged action or any steps that
And
follow.
can you see the European Union jumping up and down right now?
Right.
See? The
But that
Russians.
but that's so in a way, so once you've said that, it also means that the sanctions will not be adhered to. The Russians are not going to follow the sanctions. They say these are illegal. So it's not like, oh, well, we have to follow them because these are UN Security Council mandated sanctions. They say, no, these are illegal sanctions. So Russia is not going to follow the sanctions regime. And then I assume China will also not follow the sanctions regime. So that's quite a good outcome for Iran because then okay, so it's not going to be as bad as all that because Russia and China will openly defy the UN Security Council sanctions, and then of course uh, the Iran has now said, well, we're not going to cooperate with the IAEA. Having
And
said
now
two,
you have the Americans and the Israelis. Oh, they're not going to cooperate. Okay,
no, I think
okay.
that that's
We
that
all know what's next.
exactly, and that's I think the that I mean that's the drawback because of course now the United States and Israel will of course invoke the UN Security Council, say, hey, look, the UN Security Council has declared that Iran is in violation of the JCPOA, and Iran is not cooperating with the IAEA. We need to strike now. So without question, they're going to use this
Of
as
course.
a justification for the next attack.
The only question I have is that, um, and it would be anomalous from what we've seen from this Trump administration. Will they build a case? Because it seems to me that, they're getting their ducks lined up
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Okay. Unlike the deceptive negotiations with Iran earlier this year. So will they build a case? And then they're going to get the Europeans to build that case for them.
Yes.
The question is, George, will it affect the administration's calculus on Russia and Ukraine? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think this is they're going to pursue this one. Trump has, for whatever reason, some kind of a obsession with Israel. I mean, he's in love with Israel, in love with Netanyahu. He's completely indifferent to Russia and Ukraine. I mean, it's just he's not interested in that. This he feels passionately about. I don't exactly know why, but he does
I don't
obviously
either.
feel passionately about it. And we had the embarrassment in all these news conferences that he holds, and somebody asks him a question. You're the only person who can apply any pressure against Netanyahu. Are you going to apply any pressure on him? October the 7th, October the 7th. That's his go-to answer to every question about, well, look what Israel is doing. October the 7th. There's a UN report out saying Israel is committing genocide. October the 7th, October the 7th. So he's now completely just an Israeli propagandist. I mean, there isn't any distance at all from the
Well,
government of
and
Israel.
it was since we've seen, in this young administration, completely backing Israel's genocidal policies in Gaza, not lifting a finger, some cosmetic things about violence in the West Bank, the attack on Iran, the attack on Doha. I mean, add this all up and add 3.5 more years. I'm sorry, but his legacy will be he did Israel's bidding. That's what his
It
legacy
it is
is
Israel's
going to
bidding, and he's not even concealing it. And it's very interesting because even while he was running for office, he was distancing himself with Israel. I mean, he was distancing himself from Netanyahu. He raised questions about October the 7th. How the hell did they pull that off? That they could just simply attack Israel, and Israel was just simply caught flat-footed. He said he was expressing skepticism that that could have happened. So he he did express some skepticism about Israel. He even said, "Hey, Israel is really damaging itself in the eyes of the world." All that is now gone, and this mind-numbing response: October the 7th, October the
Well,
7th.
no, Joe, I think the clip that we've mentioned it before when Netanyahu was sitting in the Oval Office and the press was there and they said, "Mr. President," I'm paraphrasing, of course, what are your thoughts on the two-state solution? He said, "Well, ask him."
Right? Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
For me, that's a really good. It captures it.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
does.
yeah. Well, that's right.
Yeah, but what this all means, everyone, has nothing to do with Iran's nuclear program or the JCPOA. These are all diversions. This is setting up the next attack on Iran that will most likely happen this year, maybe very soon, because we already had the vote at the United Nations. Trump believes that he has the green light right now. There are people deep in the bowels of the Pentagon and the State Department are just waiting for this day.
Right,
And now here's the plan. Here's the plan.
right, right. No, no,
Mike Waltz got confirmed as UN representative for the United
yes.
States. I mean, after everything, and he's now. I mean,
What
come
I don't
on,
fully
Joe.
understand is that well,
Come on.
he's the official representative, but then the other day when there was that vote about the ceasefire at the UN Security Council, where the United States was the only vote against, the vote was cast by that Morgan Ortagus. Um, but then there's also what's her name? The
Oh yeah, Tammy Bruce.
Tammy Bruce. So how many people are actually there at the?
It's kind of like where people are exiled.
Yeah. I think you're
No,
right.
because I think Tammy Bruce, I mean, even for all the jugheads in the Republican Party, she was just too much of an embarrassment.
I kind of agree with you because my recollection is that Morgan Ortagus is when Trump appointed her, I think she was number two to
Mike Pompeo.
not to yeah that was in the first term, but recently in the second term he appoint I think to the guy the Barak. I think Barak was the
Oh, you're right. You're right.
yeah,
Yeah.
Barak was the sort of the go-to in the Levant, and he appointed her as number two to Barak, and he was very kind of nasty about her. He was saying something like, "Well, I hope that she's realized the errors of her ways and she's ready to work her way back into my favor." So he was no fan at all of Morgan Ortega. So the fact that she's here in at the UN and is it just indicates that's a
Yeah.
demotion. That Trump regards that as a real be bad
Yeah. Well, I mean,
demotion.
just look at this. Look at her clips on Fox. I mean, this this woman has a brain like a doorknob.
Right, right.
Okay, I mean, really. And what was really interesting, or kind of just pathetic, is that when Mike Pompeo had been completely discredited within the MAGA movement, she would still go on Fox and as my boss, Mike Pompeo
Yeah,
would say. I mean, it's like, lady, read the room,
yeah,
read the room,
right, right.
but she couldn't.
Yeah, no, and then they dumped Tammy Bruce as number two. I mean, you're number two at the U.S. mission at the UN. The U.S. mission or any mission to the UN, basically, they don't really do very much. I mean,
Oh.
it's all socializing. I mean, they all basically go to cocktail parties. I mean, that's all that they do. That's the whole point of being at the United Nations. It's all just cocktail parties. So if you're just the number two, then essentially it's all you're on the cocktail party circuit, which is a little odd because I don't see. Tammy Bruce as a particularly clubbable person. I don't quite see
No,
her at a
no, God,
cocktail party.
she's got the personality of a litter box. Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, so if you're number two at the mission, that make sure there are hand towels in the men's room. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. And so
Pop out to Starbucks for me. Okay.
that's right. So yeah, so now this is where that Trump does dump those who are kind of
It's
out
the
of favor.
graveyard.
So how badly did she do in the State Department news conference that for her to be exited and dumped in New York? I mean, they
Well,
really
I
were
mean,
unhappy with her performance.
Tammy, the upshot for you is, I'm trying to look out for your interest here. If the Israeli representative can't show up, you can take his place.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. No, that's always the case. But I mean, just going back to the point, I think there's no question what the Trump administration has now done, along with the Europeans. The Europeans did this knowingly, is to lay the groundwork for the next attack on Iran. They say, hey, Iran is in violation of the JCPOA. Iran is in violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Iran is not cooperating with the IAEA. That's a threat to international security. We've got to do something about this, and I think that's going to be used by the United States. I mean, the United States did something very similar in the case of Iraq because they couldn't get a Security Council resolution. So they went back to an old Security Council resolution. They go all the way back in the early 90s and said, "Oh, we're going to invoke that and to justify our attack on Iraq."
I remember on my program, I had an Israeli official, and we were talking about the origins of the illegal war on Iraq. And I said just what George said. There wasn't a United Nations Security Council vote on it. And you know what he said? I thought these propagandists from Israel, they're really clever. He said, there were too many resolutions.
Right, right. That's right.
Just throw that in there. Oh, but there were so many
That's right.
resolutions.
That's right. Because there were the resolutions way back in 1991. Iraq was supposed to cooperate with the weapons of mass destruction elimination. But of course, Iraq had been cooperating, so that was all that. But even if Iraq were not cooperating, even if you could say, all right, Iraq, it says there you have to adopt a new resolution if you're going to do anything, if you're going to determine that Iraq is not in compliance, you have to have a new resolution authorizing the use of force. You can't just simply say,
Oh, but
okay,
George,
well, we're going to go with this and
oh, George, there's so many resolutions. Okay,
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
oh God.
No, that's right. That's always the problem. And in any case, who the hell cares what the
That's
United
right.
Nations says? I mean, that's
If we don't like the resolution, then it's not a resolution. Okay, it's just
because
somebody else's propaganda. That's what they always say.
they're
Okay.
all look. They're all a bunch of anti-Semites anyway. I mean, the United
That's
Nations.
right.
They're all anti-Semites.
Well, that's a topic for another podcast. But I want to talk to you about that. And I think it'll be an interesting podcast because how long can you use this? You're an anti-Semite. What is its currency now? And what will it be in the future? Because it's overwrought. It's just used so often right now
Right.
that it just kind of, it's like water off the back of a duck. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's kind of like, Nixon when he ran for governor. I mean, he was, he pulled the McCarthyite file out, and by the mid '60s, it's just like, okay,
No, that was already the
we already did that. Okay.
yes, yes. Well, but yeah, no, but I think that the issue about the communists, of course, yeah, that attitudes changed very quickly on communism, but already in the late 1950s. So it was already
Yeah.
different from the late 1940s. But in the anti, that's a very interesting thing about the anti-Semitism. I think it is just everyone's getting tired of this. It's just you trot this out, and it's just so lame, and it's
Yeah,
not
I mean, it was anti-Semites and left-wing terrorists and Muslims that killed Charlie Kirk. It's just like,
right, right. Because
what?
and this was with Charlie Kirk when he was debating with some young with these young conservatives, and they raised this issue with him, saying, "Well, this trope, anti-Semitic, it's the same thing as with racist. We didn't like it when the left would always try to end every argument by saying racist, racist, racist. I mean, it was a stupid, mindless way to argue. Well, saying anti-Semitic, anti-Semitic, anti-Semitic is also a stupid, mindless way to argue. And Charlie Kirk agreed. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's exactly the same as just throwing out the word racist all the time. And I think that's exactly what has happened here. And so when you do that, you just say, "Oh, the United Nations, they're just all anti-Semitic." You're kind of you look like an idiot. I mean, I think that's more or less the
Yeah,
way.
I mean, particularly if that's your only and last argument, okay, you just go straight there. It doesn't work anymore, and what it does is it certainly empowers real anti-Semites,
Yeah.
fortunately.
Right. Right. No, I think so. And when the guy Smotrich has to be one of the really distinguished mind, a really distinguished intellectual figure of our time.
I wonder Smotrich doesn't it doesn't sound particularly Israeli to me. I mean, because they all of them changed their names because most of
Yeah.
them have their origins back in Poland. Okay, but
Yeah.
yeah, Smotrich,
But
he's
but
going to have a little red book of
Yeah,
quotes.
so Smotrich was saying the other day about how there are going to be real bargain basement prizes in Gaza. If you want a good real estate deals, you're going to have them in Gaza. Now, when you have somebody like Smotrich saying things like that about Gaza, hey, we can get some really good deals. Then you think, well, let me think. What would an anti-Semite describe the kind of figure that he really hates, the Jewish figure that he really hates? Smotrich. I mean, can you have anyone more express that the worst
Oh,
caricature
Shmuley.
stereotype of the Jew than Smotrich?
Shmuley, exactly the same
Shmuley.
thing.
Yeah,
He is a caricature of what anti-Semites believe a Jew is.
yeah.
They are caricatures of that, and it's. I told you he was visiting Anne Frank's house, and then some guy's filming him. Said, Why are you filming me? Because I'm a Jew? Are you anti-Semitic?" It's just
Right.
like
Yeah,
what?
yeah,
The
yeah.
guy's just, I'm
Yeah.
filming.
But
Okay.
yeah, but Smotrich, said, yeah, hey, we can make some good money here in Gaza. Think it's but what's kind of interesting, and here we go back to contemporary Israeli society, which is okay. Um, Haaretz, every single issue, every day. I mean, Haaretz, it denounces Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, and Netanyahu. I absolutely hate it. But how come they're still there? How come they're still in office? How come Smotrich is still there? He's Minister of Finance. I mean, he's a senior
He's the
minister.
Minister of Finance and he's the military governor of the West Bank.
Yes. Yeah. 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 So in a way, I mean, Israel tolerates these kinds of figures as their leaders.
Yeah.
Somebody who's saying, looks at Gaza and says, "Hey, we can make some money here."
As I said in our previous podcast, George, all of this is being memorialized. The case it's building itself every single hour, every single day. I mean, the kind of statements coming out of the Israeli government, I mean, it's not reported enough in the West. They just don't do it. You can say whatever you want in Israel, apparently. But you can't do that in the UK. What's it called? The Palestine Action Group
Yeah,
in the
that's
UK?
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
You're a terrorist in the UK.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
What in the world is
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yep, the West is turning into East Berlin. Okay. All right, everybody. This is our wrap here for Sunday. I will be out tomorrow, so we won't have a live stream. We will reconvene again Wednesday and Friday as usual. George will have his live stream on Tuesday,
Yeah,
right, Bud?
on
Buddy's
Tuesday.
confirming that.
And
Buddy's
then,
second.
yeah, exactly. They're confirming it, and then say, yeah, we want to do a little more than confirming. We want some muscle. They're ready to apply some muscle. To coerce. they're ready to coerce people into donating. So they're really tough. We're very gentle, but they mean business. And so, in order to just keep them on a more even keel, anything you've got, whatever money you're not using, straight into that tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, you got to really calm these dogs down, because they are scary. You remember The Sopranos? Some of the enforcers in The Sopranos. That's what these dogs are like. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon.